So I'd like to welcome our next two speakers to the stage. I think, well, Paul is already here. So our first speaker, and they're going to talk at a dialogue and a conversation. Our first speaker is Paul Gilbert, who, as you know, is the CEO of Community Housing Aotearoa. Paul has a really quite a long history working in community housing, and particularly in the area of finance. And then in dialogue and conversation with Paul, we've got Panapa Eho. Panapa is the Executive Director of Hikurangi Enterprises, and similar to Paul, has long been leading a large number of grassroots initiatives on the east coast of the North Island. So really looking forward to what they have to say. Please join me in welcoming them.
Kia ora koutou. It's interesting just sitting talking with Rod Carr, who's here with us and speaking shortly. Reflecting on that movie, we've known so much for so long, yet apparently done so little, and that's a theme that's come through thick and fast from the conference. Now, I promised you on day one at the very beginning, because we filmed we got Rod, for your benefit. First morning, we got everybody to stand up and think of a number, and the number was how long and how many years they've served in the community housing space, and then I started allowing people to sit down from 1 through to, I think we ended up at about 35, but Campbell Roberts wasn't in the room, and he probably would have won the whole lot as the godfather of housing. And so we ended up somewhere around 4,600 years, just so you know, of lived working experience in the housing sector in this room on the morning of day one, just to give you a sense of the knowledge and the experience and the wisdom that is in the room, and that's why I feel the growth of the momentum of the conference is a dawning realization that we have the solutions and the capability and the capacity here. And in the last session, particularly Jen Debon and Vic from Papamoa, they really talked about a coalescing, because there's been for some time some separation, and some of that has been caused by the procurement practices of MHUD, but some of that is simply a right and proper identification, self-identification, understanding who we are within the context of the housing system. And I sort of, in my mind, have this flotilla, and it's an idea that I've borrowed from the Peter McKenzie project. Jackie Chan is illustrating over there. She's our ninja illustrator. I met her through the Peter McKenzie project. And the idea is that we are together as a fleet of waka, and we have obviously heard you deeply that it's hard and that you're tired and that you see a long path ahead, and that there is deep incoherence as we seek to navigate the housing policy and lack of a really long-term plan, long-term sustainable, predictable finance and funding, so that we can get on with doing the job we all need to do. So we do get blown around quite a lot, and even some of those winds and gales have come to us here in the conference in the form of deeply divided political positions. And we've heard from the National Party, the Labour Party, from the Green Party, and a lot of that stuff, that disagreement, that criticising of each other is really an enormous distraction for us, and we're going to have to learn to not be distracted by that, because we are a flotilla, we have our North Star. I believe we have a deep sense of identity as community providers in terms of how we do what we do and why we do it. And there are some barriers that are slowing us down. And so Panapa's going to talk a little bit about the old whare and the new whare, because in a way I wanted to pick up that theme in terms of creating the new, because it's going to come from here, it's going to come from you. Our job at CHAR is probably to get as many barriers out of the way for you as we can, and to equip you as best we can. And that equipping includes being a conduit for you sharing and relating and doing the stuff you've been doing. I've been seeing all these magnificent little meetings and mini hui all over the town hall for the last 3 days, and it just lifts my heart to see the extent of the growth of the collaborative capacity that is in the room amongst you all. So look, it's tough. I think we've heard that. It's going to be a long path. I think Kay told us that on day one really clearly. It's going to get worse before it gets better. It doesn't help that we have deeply entrenched racist and structural injustices across the board in almost every place we look. Particularly, I'm interested in the finance space, and we have a shockingly poor Reserve Bank in New Zealand that simply doesn't care. Certainly seems to be intentionally hostile towards our poor and vulnerable. And so that makes things tough when we're talking about the underlying structures that we need to be working in our favour and not against us. One of the things you've said to me repeatedly throughout the conference is, and I wasn't aware of this, you're being refused insurance. Well, if you can't get insurance, then you can't get finance. And so we've got a big area of focus there that I will take away, and there's a work program. I mentioned this to Megan Woods, and she said she's happy to help us to try and knock some heads together at the Insurance Council, but that's another unfortunate structural barrier that we are seeing and experiencing on a daily basis. And look, just a hands up, if there are work programs you want us to get into, let us know, and we'll have a look at whatever we can to get those barriers out of your way. Also want to celebrate the amazing diversity of the conference. It's just been extraordinary for so many reasons. Rangatahi, the gender stuff, the particularly I heard, I'm sorry I missed it, I was in this room doing alternative tenures, but the peer support session apparently was fireworks, and that deep, yeah. Just the acknowledging the lived experience and the fundamental importance, and we all know it, right? That's the coalface, that's the grassroots, that's the stuff that matters. And when we listen deeply, then our solutions come from that listening. And so, just amazing, and a shout out to all of you for participating fully. So, I'd also like at some point, have we got some venue staff in here? No, they're going to come in a little bit later. I just think this place and the food and the AV, you guys have just been an absolute, but we'll save that until they're here because we want to thank them when they're present. I think they're going to pop in maybe at the end of what we do. Pānapa, I wanted to sort of pass over to you a bit in terms of the place-based stuff. If we go back to the themes in terms of our acknowledgement of the unique role and value that we bring. We've got skin in the game. We're in for the long haul. We're not doing extractive financial profit and paying dividends to shareholders. We retain and recycle the value within the housing system. Can you give us a little bit of a view from your perspective in Tairāwhiti and Gisborne, where you're based, but your hometown's Ruatoria? What does place mean to you and your people as you lean into the space of adequately housing your people?
Tēnā koe e ho. O tuatahi, kānui te mihi ki a koutou, ko tai mai ki tēnei huihui, a mauria mai o taonga, o aroha, ki ngā whānau katoa o enei motu. Ka puta atu a taku aroha ki a koutou. Ki ngā mana whenua, kānui te mihi a mauria mātou, o ngā hau e whā, ka tai mai o te ngaungau ana o enei whakaro arohanga mō ngā whānau katoa. So just for ka huri ki te reo parawa, just acknowledging all of you that are here and that have brought your jewels, your treasures to share for the well-being of all our people. And as you said, Paul, like all those taonga are all being brought out in their shininess, not so much in this space, but around the beautiful kai, in between all the things. So just want to acknowledge that. As we were sitting down here, and to the crew that are doing all the tech, I definitely want to tahai that video that we just saw. But the place-based stuff. So I was really moved by that video, and I really want to acknowledge Awatea and Richard. Are you fellas up in the corner over here from the peer crew? Yeah. So the session before this, for me, was the most moving was the most moving presentation that I've experienced since I've been here. And if I liken it to that video that we saw, these guys are these Tane, and I came in a little bit late to that, but these two Tane shared their experiences of going from being the most vulnerable people to be the ones that are lifting people. And so I can't quite see, but the bro's got on his Lakers gears and his yellow hat, and he's literally shining like Tamanui Te Rā. And we saw that in that video. Now, what I saw in that video, and I connect to the session that they had, was there was that one little fish that went and had a talk to that fellow that was dressed in an astronaut suit. And when those two tamariki and their kuri were on top of that van that they were floating along on, and they were about to go into the most perilous place in that whole time, is that all the ika rose and lifted them into the sunshine. The place-based and the peer support stuff was what we saw in the session beforehand, that everyone came together to be able to lift, to take those people that were in the most vulnerable place into the place of light. So when I look out here, I see all the place-based things that are happening, that you guys are the treasure of our nation in housing. You're not the only ones, but you guys are the epitome of that. And you guys are all the fish that are lifting our people up to where they need to be. So in a roundabout way, I'm still going on with the mihi to you fellas because I'm in awe of all that you are. So, tying that back to what we do. Should I go to that part, Ned, or do we have a bit more of a discussion? Okay, so put your hands up if you came to dinner last night. Okay. Is Jonathan in the whare? No. So, okay, so we were all blessed to witness a show by Jonathan Usher. He's one of the board members for J.R. Mackenzie. He did a magic trick, a magic show, and he taught me a little bit of magic. I don't know how I'm going to do this with one hand, but we'll figure it out. So he showed me this trick when I was able to pull a presentation out of my hat, like a rabbit out of a hat. So I'm going to get you guys to count down from 3, 2, 1, and then I need you to do a little bit of hooting, and we'll see if we can get some magic going. Okay, so on the count of kia rite. Yeah, thanks, techies. So yeah, this is our organisation came out of increasing the well-being of whānau and whenua and the environment that we live within. Like many, like a lot of rural places, we're out on the edge, and when you're on the edge, you generally don't get looked after that well by the system. So we're from Norua Tori Ahau, kei raro te maro a maunga hukurangi, koe he uri o Māui, o Ngāti Uwe Pōhatu, Ngāti Parau, ko Panapa Eho Ahau. So I think I'm just going to have to nod for the next bit to click. So Hukurangi Enterprises came out of wanting to increasing wellbeing, and these are the 3 things that we focus on. Is if you can house your people and you can feed your people and you can give them meaningful mahi where you get to use your superpowers, then that's the baseline for where we can do anything else. If you don't have a whare, you can't even imagine what it's like to get to your full potential. Oh, we've got a clicker. Right, here we go. So our housing kaupapa, we've got a couple that we do in the space, but whare ora really comes out of it's focused on people. And what we see out here is the mahi that you guys do is focused on people. And then we're trying to put houses around them. And so this is our approach to ground up. So from our whānau, we understand what their needs are. And that's, as was spoken to in many of the sessions, is about listening to our people. Just as Paul has just said, we hear you, and now we can move forward from that. And then we have a building company where we build some whare. Now, most of what we do, or most of what you guys do, from what I've seen, is all within an ecosystem. And the ecosystem that we have looks from the environment all the way through to the people via housing. So for us, that really looks like going all the way from the timber plantations that we have, into harvesting, into milling timber, and all the things that we have green circles around are the things that we're doing right now, that we have our own kaimahi doing. So we have a crew that mills timber from our own whenua that goes to our own builders to build into our own whare for our own people. So along that through that ecosystem and through the value chain, once we mill the timber, we have to dry it, we have to treat it, and then we add value by turning it into our own windows, our own doors, our own furniture, etc., etc. And so this whole model, the whakaaro that we have is around creating local resilience, so that we have, over time, all the resources that we need to house our own people, so that we're not chasing crumbs, so that we're not getting pissed off when ministers get up and don't listen to us, and they talk to us, they talk at us. Anyway, I won't get too much on that rant. So there's other things that we're doing. We're localising our energy creation around wastewater systems, so that we have that mātauranga within our own community. Now, Ruatori is not a big place. There's about 1,300 people in the wider rohinga. But if we surround our rangatahi with people who do this stuff, then we can remember what it was like for our ancestors, for our tupuna only 3 or 4 generations ago, to be able to supply us with what we need from our own resources around us. That also gives us a view to be able to see over a horizon of what are the resources that we need. So if we go all the way back to the forestry, we can start planting tōtara that will be ready for generations in 200 years. One of Paul's, this is where I met Paul, working in the finance space. The biggest barrier that we see for housing is access to capital and access to finance. The biggest bugbear that I hear through this whole conference is the frustration of getting the access to the resources that we need to do the do, because we know how to do the do. I had the privilege of being at the National Māori Housing Conference a handful of weeks ago, as many of the people in did here. And the key thing that came out of that was, give us the money and get out of the way. So in the finance space, a lot of our whānau don't necessarily have the capability to be able to, or the capacity or the knowledge or the experience to be able to manage finance well, especially when you're looking at debt. So we've created a scaffolding system to be able to walk hand in hand with our whānau based upon relationship. And just to kind of round it off, we've got a kai program as well that comes out of the same infrastructure. So that's to feed our people, house our people, and give meaningful mahi across all the things that you can see up there. So that's our place-based approach to what we do. And just a little under 24 months, we've built 50 whare. We have 16 people employed from our local community, and their well-being is increasing because of that. This was the first whare that we built. It was for a whānau of 17 that were living in a 3-bedroom home that overcrowded, not healthy. So this is where we started. We don't build houses. We don't build squares or blocks and then put people into them. We go and listen to the people and then build whare that go around them. And so this is an example of a whare that was specifically built for them so that it met their needs. Not just their needs now, but what their needs were going to be in 5, 10, 15, 20 years from what they could see at that time. And this will tie into our next speaker. Our whole kaupapa is about creating local resilience, intergenerational local resilience. And then we have things like this that came and hit us in February. So this is a photo of Cyclone Gabrielle. That really brought to the fore of the importance of local resilience. We had no roads, we had no infrastructure, we had no ability to bring things in, but when we have it within ourselves, then we can provide it. So this was the week after Cyclone Gabrielle. We had the ability, we had the facilities, we had the resources to be able to build whare, and we knew that people needed whare. We applied what most of you guys have, was a huge amount of courage to not wait until any funding was secured. We took on probably a risk of about $600,000 or $800,000 worth of resources input and just started building whare. Now, many of you will manage your fiscal things quite tightly, as we all have to do, but it was really a leap of faith of knowing that there were whānau that had no whare at that moment that were going to need them, and the resources would come. We didn't know how, but we just went through. 4 building companies stopped working what they were doing, and in 1 month built 10 whare for whānau that needed them, just out of their own aroha for the kaupapa. Those are a few that we've sent down to our relations down in Wairoa. And this is just bringing it back to local. These are our kaimahi who have come from some of the most hardest places. You know, ones that have been through the jail system, ones that have lived in tents for as long as they can remember, and now they're inputting into, they're the rangatira of the kaupapa, they're the ones that provide the light, they're the flying fish that lift the rest. So in a roundabout way, that's our way that we are coming from the ground up to look after our own.